We're going to follow that by finding out what's going on at the beautiful Abbot Hall, which has recently reopened after, I think it's 3 years that it was closed, but it was 3 years, yeah. I went down there for the opening a few weeks ago, but fortunately we've got Rhian, who's the Chief Executive of Lakeland Arts. And of course, Abbot Hall is one of the jewels in the crown of Lakeland Arts. So we're going to hear about that, see some pictures, and find out why they are doing what they're doing and where they are going now with I think, a slightly tweaked vision, it's fair to say. We're also going to hear from Kat Messenger, who's going to talk to us actually about a new way of looking at storytelling, really. But I'll let her talk to you more about that and how artists and creatives can perhaps get interested and involved in that. And then we're also going to hear from Jane, who's at Prism Arts. There's a really interesting job going at Prism based in Carlisle, and she's going to share some reflections about that as well. So that is the plan for this morning. As ever, it's a chance to chip in chat, as ever, about stuff that you're doing, that you're going on, that you want help with, and a chance to sort of celebrate what's going on in Cumbria on this beautiful, day 70 of sunshine that we all seem to be getting, which is just beautiful. Right. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over the reins to Rhian, who is the Chief Exec of Lakeland Arts. We've got some slides which Amy is going to get out, and Rhian's going to tell us the story of Abbot Hall.
Fantastic. So we'll start with the first slide. Just to say, I can kind of sort of understand. My husband has a really similar story to yours, but he's a Chelsea supporter, so you'll probably spit at each other a bit, but also have some understanding. He has a very similar story, so I get it, even if I'm Welsh and it's the wrong shaped ball. But anyway, back to Abbot Hall. And the wonderful, long anticipated reopening. But hello, everybody. Great to see you all, and wonderful to be here on this lovely Friday morning, which is gorgeous and sunny. Just a wee reminder about Lakeland Arts. So I think some of you are familiar with us. We are an arts and heritage charity. We run Blackwell and Windermere Jetty Museum and Bowness and Abbot Hall, and Lakeland Museum was Museum of Lakeland Life and Industry in the past in Kendal. So 3 weeks ago, with great anticipation, we reopened Abbot Hall after 3 years, and after a fairly smallish refurbishment project. What I thought I'll start by doing, and this is just a nice picture, this is a painting that was there pre the refurbishment and is still there, but is in sort of our newly refurbished Abbot Hall, so the colours are different, and sitting alongside it is one of our new acquisitions by an artist called Charmaine Watkist, and she's going to be our big summer show next year in 24, but a bit more about her later. But just a really quick, brief overview of the project, then we'll start looking at more pictures and I'll start talking a bit more about the detail. What do we do? So what do we do during this project, which took a while to get there because of COVID? And I can answer questions about that afterwards, but I'm not going to go into that now about what happened with a larger project and why we ended up doing a smaller project, but I can certainly talk about that if people want to ask me questions. But anyway, what did we do? So we did a complete internal and external redecoration, and what we based it on was very much a clean art gallery model. We do have historic spaces, and you can see we've used some sort of historic colours, as you can see in the room where the Lady Anne Clifford painting is, but we made them have quite a fresh contemporary feel. So we weren't trying to recreate a 18th century, Georgian villa. We were trying to make it really clear that Abbot Hall is opening as an art gallery. It's a historic building, absolutely, we'll respect that, but first and foremost, it's an art gallery. We then did a huge condition survey of the window frames, for those who are interested in that sort of thing, repaired and replaced some of those damaged frames. And then, of course, with all these sorts of projects, most of the money goes into stuff you can't see. So we had a complete new electrical installation to make sure the building was safe to come into, new lighting tracks, replacement of disabled chair lifts, air conditioning units, emergency lighting, fire alarms, new Wi-Fi infrastructure, just to give you an idea that sort of all the basics that you need and expect to have in a building hadn't been done for a while, and we to ensure that was fit for purpose for us. Importantly, we replaced the flooring in galleries because we had had, prior to closure, quite a few artists who said they wouldn't work with us because the flooring was so awful. It was this kind of slightly nasty, messy, sort of what looked like 70s Hessian sort of flooring. That's now simple and clean and neutral. You don't even see it, which is what it should do. As you walk around the site, if you've been there or if you do come, our new signage, fresh, contemporary, with our lovely yellow branded Abbot Hall is everywhere, and it makes it feel like a welcoming space. It's also much more visible. As you know, you have to walk through 2 car parks if you know the building at all to get to the gallery, but it's more visible from the high street, and that's really important too. We did a minor bit of flood resilience because obviously we're close to River Kent, we need to ensure we can do some of that. But for those, I think the biggest transformation, and for those of you who are familiar with the building, we've taken the boards and shutters off the windows, and really important, let natural light flood into the building. Our original shutters are still in place in lots of places, so we can close them at night, or we can close them when we need to get darkness, as we do in the current exhibition. We've got anti-UV film on the windows to protect our works of art, but I mean, obviously can regularly monitor light levels. But there is now a really strong sense of the inside and the outside connecting, and you get that real visual connection with the surrounding fells and landscape outside, which echoes our new vision, which is to focus thematically on landscape and identity. And I'll talk a bit more about that later, as well as we carry on through. But our real ambition with reopening Abbot Hall is to open it as a responsive and welcoming space for the community and Kendal, as well as visitors from elsewhere, ensuring we play a really important role in the local visitor economy. We want the gallery to start to become a civic space, so people will gather, connect with our inspiring collections, experience outstanding great collections and exhibitions and world-class art, which we still want to bring to Cumbria. So you don't have to go to Manchester, London to see great exhibitions. You can come to Kendal to see them, and that's still going to be an ambition, as well as it becoming a place for the community to feel more connected to. So that feels, I think, quite a different approach. Can we have the next slide, please, Amy? So this is what would, those of you familiar with it, this was what was known as the old Red Romney room. They had sort of red silk walls that the silk wallpaper was starting to go mouldy. So as you can see, we completely, and there used to be some rather sort of ornate curtains. So you can see the window, we've completely stripped it away. That's a sense of respecting the historic fabric. I think you actually notice the cornicing more now, but we've made it feel fresh and contemporary. What you can see strikingly in the center there is Barbara Hepworth's Moonform, that we'd had on loan to the gallery for many years, but now it's a permanent acquisition. It was given to us under the acceptance and lieu scheme during lockdown. Next slide, please. It's just another view to start to give you a feel of what the spaces look like and how fresh and different they are. Next slide, please. Just to mention, I'm going to talk about our current exhibition at the moment, but just to say there are elements of our permanent collection on display, some old favorites, again, if people are familiar with the collection. If you're not, this is one of the most important works in the Abbot Hall collection. It's Turner's Passage of St. Gothard's Pass, and it's watercolor, and this image does not do it justice, so you do have to come along to have a look at it. It is one of the most extraordinary watercolors we have in the collection. Next slide, please. And something that's less familiar is Joseph Wright of Derby's Bowder Stone, which you might all be familiar with as Cumbrians in Borrowdale, where people used to put sort of lines, sort of steps up against it and ladders up against it, and used to climb it to get to the top of it. So we've got some works that connect the current exhibition that have been actually chosen by the artists. We're working with Julie Brooke as part of the exhibition. Next slide, please. So this is the gallery space. So you can start to see how different it feels. You can see in the distance the yellow signage with Abbot Hall on it, and that's everywhere. And then the lovely staircase that I spent hours cleaning myself personally. So it was everybody, all hands on deck at the end. But our opening exhibition is by British land artist Julie Brooke, who has worked internationally in Africa, Japan, as well as in uninhabited spaces and places in Scotland and now in Cumbria. Come in the next slide, please. This is now in the upstairs galleries. You can start to see how clean and fresh they are. And this is all with Julie's work. So the current exhibition that we've opened with, echoing our new vision to focus on ecology, landscape, and identity, is called What Is It That Will Last? It runs throughout all the galleries. Effectively, it's a kind of takeover, but as I said, it is peppered with elements of our permanent collection that Julie has selected with the curatorial team. And it offers, I think, an insight into this extraordinary and ongoing body of work that is often created in very remote spaces and incorporates film, sound, photography, and drawing. And the visitor is really invited to explore, the artist's deep and immersive relationship with the landscape. Her work often emerges from her inhabitation of the landscape and its the materials. She works with what's immediately around her. And exposed to the full range of natural forces, these works are usually transient. They disappear. They're not meant to stay in the landscape. Or they're eventually eroded away by the elements, because she often creates extraordinary stone stacks in the middle of the sea, and then she sets fire to them. They're called the fire stacks, and I haven't got the images of that, but you must come and have a look at the exhibition. But her work is very powerful and about that deep connection between the artist and the landscape. I do the dog's going now, so excuse that. She will be quiet in a minute. Can I have the next slide, please? And this is now what was the main gallery. You can see the slide at the end. That's actually Julie with a very colourful coat in the background. And as I say, because most of her actual sculptural works are transient or in uninhabited spaces, she creates lots of drawings and work around her work. So you can actually really follow the artist's process through the exhibition. So on the right-hand wall, you can see a very large charcoal work by Julie. So there's some really stunning works of art, 2D traditional works of art in the exhibition, as well as a lot of multimedia experience. Next slide, please. And this is Julie herself alongside the work, a bit of a more sort of up close and personal picture of her as well. So can I have the next slide, please? So this is a picture from our opening Saturday, our community day, when we welcomed the community to share, they'll celebrate the opening with us. So part of our ambition is, in terms of our new vision, is with a collection at the heart of our programme. We're hoping the gallery will start to become a fruitful ground for new ideas, community conversations and collaboration. And importantly, we want to start to support well-being as well. So you can see the community day here. We had over 300 people came along, tons of local families came along to help us celebrate, loads of creative activity. We had music by young Cumbrian musicians, and it was a really joyous day for everyone. It happened to be as sunny and beautiful as it's been, I think it has been since then, on that date. Is that helped that sense of almost running a kind of village fete. Next slide, please. You can actually probably do the next few. I think I probably did quite a few community ones because they're just nice pictures to watch young people getting creative. Next image, please. So we had music, we had, so as we said, we had young musicians, and then we also had drumming as well, which is very exciting. Next slide, please. Thank you. And just to say about our community work, the current work we do with communities will continue and expand as we open Abbot Hall. We've actually now got a place, obviously we do community work out in communities and other sites, but now we've actually got Abbot Hall open and we can welcome community back in. Those of you might have seen our bright yellow mend van out on the road. It's an award-winning programme. It's effectively kind of a mobile creative van that takes art and making out into Cumbrian communities who can't come to us. So those of you who are old enough to remember where you used to get those library vans that used to go into communities and take libraries out to communities, we take art and making and a bit of a mini museum out into communities. It's one of the ways that we interact with our community, both on site and off site. And certainly the Mend Van will continue its journeys across the county. So that's again, a big part of our new vision for Abbot Hall that correlates with the main vision about becoming much more connected with our communities. Can I have the next slide, please? I think it's probably more community stuff, isn't it? Oh, no, we're back to Julie. I'll come there in a second. And just to plug as well, I don't have an image of it, is the old cafe, which used to be called the Bakestone, is called now Creative Space and Coffee Bar. Again, it's fresh, exciting, appealing. Come on down. It's just going to be a coffee bar. It's just going to be cake and coffee. The walls are decorated with beautiful ceramic plates made by Castle Park Primary from Kendal. There are art materials. There are books. So people can come along. They can make. They can do. It's also going to be a warm space for the winter. We want it to be a real community space, for a creative space. Come along and create, or just come and sit and have a coffee. There are tables and chairs outside, so you can just enjoy it. Sorry, Amy, can we go back one? I need to go back to Julie. Sorry, the slides got put in a slightly strange order, so forgive me. So now just going briefly back to Julie, an extension to the exhibition, What Is It That Will Last, is an exciting new collaboration for Lakeland Arts with Holker Hall. It's a new sculpture commission. We commissioned it, but working in partnership with Holker Hall and Burlington Quarries. The sculpture is called Out of the Ground, A Thread of Air. It is 450 tons of Braithwaite Cumbrian slate. And that raw material has been brought from Burlington Quarry to the more formal surroundings of the Holker Deer Park. It's interesting on approach. I think a couple of people I know, Tom, on the call has seen this. It appears to be, and you're seeing it from the right side, so maybe we should have had an image of the other side. It appears to be just like a large pile of stones. And as you approach it and you start to explore and examine it further, method and process start to appear. And as you turn around the corner, as you can actually see them, this formal ascension of stairs is revealed, and a sort of order is revealed in the chaos. But it is absolutely monumental. It's a huge sculpture, and you can interact with it. You can walk up the stairs, and when you get to the top, you get wonderful views over the deer park. So it's well worth a visit and an experience. It's outside the paywall, so you can go in and just go and visit the sculpture if you want to. But yes, for us, it could be a start of an ongoing relationship with larger spaces across Cumbria where we can commission great big works. So the opening weekend was a great success. We had good press locally, nationally, and internationally. There is more to follow, and more signage will go up across the 6-month run of the exhibition. With social media, the campaign we've been running is to also feature local voices. We've not only had me doing a film or curators doing a film, we've actually gone out into the community, and we've got a range of people talking about local businesses, local sort of community activists who talking about what Abbot Hall means to them, local councillors, and that we're sort of releasing them in bits across the 6 months. So you'll start to get a range of voices. It's not just about our voice, it's about other people engaging, talking about what Abbot Hall means to them and what they'd like to see going forwards. So come along, we'd love to see you. I'm just going to very briefly, if I may, quickly talk about the exhibitions across our venues for the summer, and then I'm happy to answer questions. Next slide, please. So very quickly, this is our Blackwell summer exhibition. Sculptor, designer and maker Halima Cassell. She exhibited at Blackwell 10 years ago, and she cites it as being the exhibition that launched her career. She's internationally significant, and most of the major galleries and museums in this country have examples of her work. It's an exciting new exhibition at Blackwell this summer. It will be opening on the 8th of July at Blackwell. Come along and have a seat. Next slide, please. And then our big show at Windermere Jetty is Lego Lake District. It's a 10-meter squared Lego model. There was loads of press around it about Christmas time. There's been a bit more since. We're the first place in the Lake District who's going to be displaying it. It was built and designed by artist John Tordoff. He began building the medal during the COVID pandemic as a hobby, and it's now grown into a ridiculous, ambitious project. The model's currently made up of 200,000 pieces of Lego, and it spans 60 boards, and it's still growing. He's only just done the North Lakes, really. He's coming down to the Langdales. He's not even got as far as Windermere yet. But it really reflects his passion and love for the Lake District. He's a Derbyshire man, and his exploration of this kind of our wonderful landscape that surrounds us. So there will be tons of Lego fun and exploration throughout the summer. So come and have a look at that. But yes, I've spoken for a bit, so I shall stop now and take questions. But thank you very much for listening, and please come along to see Abbot Hall or any of the other exhibitions. We'd be delighted to welcome you.
Rhian, thank you. So I think at the age of 6 was when I got into Lego as well. So my whole childhood is being revisited.
It's all about 6, isn't it?
Yeah, that looks fantastic. I remember all the press that came out about the guy building it. Did you know about that? So first of all, thank you, Abbot Hall. I mean, I went there for the opening, and it is a tremendous exhibition and reinvigoration of the building as well. All that daylight flooding in through the windows. I went to Abbot Hall, a couple of times before the pandemic, and again, for those people that have been there in the past and perhaps haven't been back yet since it reopened, you'll just notice this sense of space and openness and kind of possibility, I think, is what I felt wandering around the exhibition. There's some really fascinating big screen films of Julie Brooks' work. The fire, what do they call it again? The fire
stacks, yeah.
Fire stacks. It's amazing. I listened to her talk about how she did it, and they're amazing films about how fire and water meet and who wins, kind of thing. And then finally, if you can get to Hoker Hall, that 420 tons of rock with a staircase going up the middle of it. It's just really interesting, and it's plonked in the middle of this deer park, and I think the deer and the wild, I think one of the things that's been interesting, that how will the wildlife react to it, how will they deal with it through the seasons. I think when the rock gets wet, it looks completely different. Again, it just takes you to a different place, and surely that's what art is all about. So I think congratulations, Rhian, to you and your team for, you've taken your time to do it, 3 years, but, I'm joking. It's taken, you had a pandemic to deal with as well. and all that infrastructure work that, as you say, no one ever sees, but actually means the place will be fine and solid for the future, is fundamental to the Cumbrian artistic landscape, I think. My question to you, and perhaps anyone else pop up with any questions as well, would be, yeah, just tell us a bit more about how you feel, yeah, as Lakeland Arts, as an NPO, as a public money funded organisation of which Abbot Hall is an aspect. You obviously feel an obligation to the community. It sounds like that's kind of moved on a bit over the last 3 years, and that's a much more of a at the forefront of your vision now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Hatman has been there, I think, since I first arrived. I've been here about 4 years. I arrived, and when I lived in Kendal, and at that stage Abbot Hall was open, and I was here for about 6 months before it closed. But I was really surprised about how people didn't connect with Abbot Hall, and I'd meet people, you know, from all walks of life. And some people hadn't even heard of it, who lived in Kendal all their lives. And that just felt incredibly sad, that you had these extraordinary resources on your doorstep that weren't being engaged with. And that, you know, that was the gallery spot. We needed to reach out into the community. So there was a massively different approach. And I think we've grown that vision over the last few years. And I think COVID changed that vision too. I think we realized that we all needed to become much more local and much more connected to the people immediately around us. Of course, it doesn't mean we don't welcome visitors from elsewhere. We want to do that. We all need to do that to survive at our venues. You know, we have to self-generate over 80% of our income. So we need visitors from elsewhere to visit. But first and foremost, we want to be for the local community. That is essential to us. So it's trying to find different ways, and we'd welcome comments from people because we can always do it better, is how do we continue to connect with the community? What else can we do in terms of the kind of work we show? What else can we do to help sort of you know, we are aiming at Abbot Hall to show local artists' work as well as artists from elsewhere, and you know, elements of our permanent collection. That's absolutely going to be a feature of our program going forwards. And I should have mentioned, because we didn't have a huge amount of time this morning, is that next spring we'll almost do a rehab, because this has been the opening exhibition, Julie's exhibition. It's been a takeover of the building. When we reopen next spring, we'll be sort of rehanging the permanent collections on the lower ground floors, and then having a series of temporary exhibitions, as was previously, on the upper floors. But the whole thing will change around more than it did in the past, and there will certainly be lots of opportunities to work with local artists. We still do an awful lot of commissioning work. We're about to launch a series of commissions that there were open calls for. But yes, what we want to do is for Abbot Hall, but all our sites, but it's become really deeply embedded in the community, and to work with people in a completely different way. We want them to be welcoming spaces, and spaces that people can come engage with. That might be through a more formal way, through schools, or through an event or an activity, but also when we want to start to really listen to people and understand what local people might want from their local gallery. This is Kendal's gallery, as well as it belongs to obviously Cumbria too, but we want to hear from all of you. So, you know, whether you sort of get in touch with me via Tom or Kate, or get directly, you know, we really welcome hearing from you. But it's a very different approach. It's about connecting and creating space for those community conversations, with our collections inspiring some of that dialogue. And that connection with art and landscape, over 50% of the collection at Abbot Hall are landscapes. We're right on the River Kent, which floods. So we want to be talking about issues that have contemporary relevance and meaning for local people. And how can we use the collections to kind of spark some of those conversations and highlight some of those issues?
That was going to be my next question, which was, you know, the whole landscape theme, but you've answered it. You know, is an evolution and a natural one for a gallery sitting in the middle of the Lake District.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's sort of, and you know, the new vision partly came, the landscape identity came from, you know, what connects four quite disparate, you know, galleries and museums. You've got Lakeland Museum, Social History Museum, Abbot Hall, an art gallery. You've got, you know, an arts and crafts house and a boat museum. It's all about their sense of place. It's about place and it's about people. And that's what connects all those together. And that sort of formed then a new vision about what we need to be about and doing and connecting with this landscape and identity.
Last one for me, and if anyone else wants to chip in, then do shout in chat or put your hand up. You know, just picking up on what Amy's put into chat, which is there's another exhibition opening at the People's Gallery at Kendal Museum, and also there's the gallery. It just slipped my name. The Modern Gallery.
Crosslane. Yeah,
you know, do the major players in Kendal talk to each other? Is there a sense of collaboration? You know, Kendal has this kind of brand of a festival town, but does the artist community, you know, collaborate?
I would hope we would do some more. We certainly speak to Cross Lane, and we have been in contact with Kendal Museum. I would be really keen, I'm just throwing it out there now. It's something I did when I used to live in East London. We won't do it as frequently, but something called like a Thursdays, which is, we might do it once a quarter, where you have a late night opening. And I know Brewery's keen on this, on a Thursday, and people can come along and have a look. And, you know, it might be something just to start with, a way of just getting the community connecting with the galleries in a different way. But I think there's lots of room for collaboration across Kendal, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's not the biggest of places, is it? Everything's within walking distance.
Exactly. It seems silly. We all want to work together, and we want to be there for the community. So yeah, it makes sense to be joined up.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thank you, Rhian, and thank you for sharing having a matching bottle with a cardigan. Impressive too. You know, I say I went there. It was a nice day. Went to Hoka. It was fantastic. Actually, I want to be there when there's kind of no one else there, so I can really appreciate the stuff as well. So with all these galleries, with these big pieces of work, going on quiet days is often a much more rewarding experience, I think. But the cafe sounds great, and that sense of newness, you know, and sort of resetting, I think, is really exciting. And as I said, Julie Brooks' stuff is really interesting. Take time to savor it if you can. You know, it's a great important piece of the cultural infrastructure of Cumbria, I think, Abbot Hall, and it's fantastic to have it back up and running. And thank you, Rhian, and to your team for getting it into that position. And other stuff going on in Kendal as well, opening tonight too. Lovely, thank you, Rhian. Well, do stick around, because we're now going to cross to Catriona Catriona or Catriona?
It is Catriona.
Catriona. I'm just being misled by the O.
Yeah,
Catriona.
there's a sneaky O in there.
Yeah, who I had a chat with earlier this week, after she got in touch. And I'm not going to try and steal her thunder, but it's basically a new way of looking at storytelling, and it's this thing called Dark Mountain. So Catriona, tell us a bit more about that, and tell us how it's relevant to the creative community of Cumbria.
Okay. I'm just going to tell you that I am mostly going to read for some notes. I actually find Zoom really stressful. It sends my brain into stress. So bear with me, I will do my best. So yeah, well, I want to just a little bit of me. So yes, I'm Catriona, and I'm an artist and a poet. And creativity is always on my agenda, always. And I did give this talk a little title. I called it A Creative Opportunity for Active Participation. And it is inspired by the Dark Mountain Manifesto. But before I talk about that, I just want to set the scene a little bit and talk about the stories that you mentioned, Tom. So our journey through life is one of stories. We have narratives about ourselves, about others, and about the world. And these are passed down through the generations, but also created by our life experiences. And you'll know for your own experience of being you, these stories can be helpful and unhelpful. They cause difficulties in our lives. And sometimes we really need to find new stories to create change and serve our well-being. So the Dark Mountain Project is one that recognises that stories weave our reality, and encourages the search for new stories for a civilization whose upward trajectory is not sustainable and is therefore starting to unravel. The manifesto is too long for me to read to you right now, but I will share a few paragraphs just so you can get a flavour of them. So the first section is just part of the introduction. So this is where it all began, a self-published pamphlet born out of 2 years of conversations, crowdfunded over the internet, launched at a small riverside gathering outside of Oxford in summer of 2009. Written by Paul Kingsnorth and Dougal Hine, it marked the first attempt to put into words the ideas and feelings which led to the Dark Mountain. Think of it as a flag raised so that we can find each other, a point of departure rather than a party line. An invitation to a larger conversation that continues to take us down unexpected paths. The myth of progress is to us what the myth of God-given warrior prowess was to the Romans, or the myth of eternal salvation was to the conquistadors. Without it, our efforts cannot be sustained. Onto the root stock of Western Christianity, The Enlightenment, at its most optimistic, grafted a vision of an earthly paradise towards which human effort, guided by calculating reason, can take us. Following this guidance, each generation will live a better life than the life of those that went before it. History becomes an escalator, and the only way is up. On the top floor is human perfection. It is important that this should remain just out of reach in order to sustain the sensation of motion. Recent history, however, has given this mechanism something of a battering. The past century too often threatened a descent into hell rather than the promised heaven on earth. Today's generation are demonstrably less content and consequently less optimistic than those that went before. They work longer hours with less security and less chance of leaving behind the social background into which they were born. They fear crime, social breakdown, overdevelopment, environmental collapse. They do not believe that the future will be better than the past. Individually, they are less constrained by class and convention than their parents and grandparents, but more constrained by law, surveillance, state prescription, and personal debt. Their physical health is better, their mental health more fragile. Nobody knows what is coming. Nobody wants to look. The very fact that we have a word for nature is evidence that we do not regard ourselves as part of it. Indeed, our separation from it is a myth integral to the triumph of our civilization. We are the first generations to grow up surrounded by evidence that our attempt to separate ourselves from nature has been a grim failure. The attempt to sever the hand from the body has endangered the progress we hold so dear and has endangered much of nature too. So the manifesto is summarised into 8 bullet points, and I'll just read you number 3 and 4. We believe that the roots of these crises lie in the stories we have been telling ourselves. We intend to challenge the stories which underpin our civilization, the myth of progress, the myth of human centrality, and the myth of our separation from nature. These myths are more dangerous for the fact that we have forgotten they are myths. We will reassert the role of storytelling as more than mere entertainment. It is through stories that we weave reality. So that's a little introduction into the Dark Mountain. You can find them online and read the whole manifesto yourself. The name The Dark Mountain seems to cause discomfort for many people I've spoken to about it, and this manifesto has had myriad responses. So the Dark Mountain is the creative seed for this endeavour. However, it isn't just about the Dark Mountain Manifesto. It's really about the invitation to create opportunity to respond creatively to the narratives we find deep dissatisfaction with, and the wish for new narratives to explore. There is a lot of unravelling chaos and change out there, which can leave us feeling dismayed and powerless. The creative arts are a powerful way to express new ideas. The Dark Mountain team invite artists and writers to respond in this way, and they publish a book every year with collections of these creative responses. For me, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing with the manifesto, or about judging what is right or what is wrong in our world. It's about exploring the stories that trouble us and creatively imagining what could be different. It's about change, about our societies being built on stories, how they can be helpful and unhelpful, but focusing on what new narratives could exist, searching for them through the creative arts. New imaginings for a changing world. Creatives have a powerful impact on the stories that weave our reality. It's about doing what creatives do best, imagining possibilities and expressing them in countless ways. For instance, what might an exhibition of these inner rumblings for change look like? I think it could look spectacular. Could Cumbrian artists and writers create a wave of challenging creativity that is looking inward and forward for new stories for this world? We all have some measure of discomfort, dissatisfaction and unrest inside us around the stories that build our society, about our relationships with each other and the broader world around us. The stories which build us, build our relationships, build societies, and can cause separation from each other and the environment of this planet. Responding creatively gives a voice to these inner rumblings, giving life to thoughts and hope. So, to summarise, what am I looking for? Well, at this point, I think it's quite simple. I'm looking for creative people who also feel excited about the idea of responding with creative arts to our current global issues and what else can be beyond them. Whatever that journey is, whether it be sadness and disbelief about war, worry and frustration about consumerism, anger and dismay about the capital growth mindset, despair about racism, desire for connection with the natural world, deep concern for other species, fears of how we live with and adapt to climate change, hope for a more community-orientated future, celebration of the best of human nature, or absolute agony about our misplaced perspectives, all with the intention of reaching for creative expression of what else could there be. Is there anyone out there that sees the creative arts as a powerful tool for expressing other visions for life on this planet, the stories we could express for the future? Okay, so I think Cumbria is a very inspiring place, and I think we're full of talent and full of people that have got voices that aren't heard as well as they could be heard. And I just think it's an opportunity for us to, a creative opportunity to, and I wonder as well whether it could be some kind of workshop in a way that, because you have to express what's already there before you can go beyond and find the new stuff. So it feels like it would be a journey of expressing all the unrest and all the sadness and all the anger about whatever it is, so that you then create space for expressing something new creatively. Does that make sense? And has anybody got any questions?
So, well, Andrew's put wow, Emma's put yes. I like the phrase inner rumblings quite a lot. Quite like that sense of something deep down being a bit unsettled, whatever. We've got a couple of minutes, Catriona. Your own interest in this has been, you've been engaged with this for how long?
Well, I've been engaged with the idea of stories and that they create our own experience of the world and the world itself my whole life, I would say.
But the Dark Mountain bit in particular.
The Dark Mountain is just recent. It's just really a couple of months ago. I found it on the Sustainable Carlisle website,
okay.
And it just blew me away. It just really spoke to me,
yeah.
And it just got me excited about what could be done with this creatively. Really
interesting. Can you Amy's very helpfully put the web link to the darkmountain.net website into chat. And Catriona, if you, as Amy says, is there a formal call out, or would you like artists to contact you directly? I think at this stage, if you want to put your contact details into chat, feel free to do so.
Okay.
Or otherwise we can funnel them through the network address. But feel free to put your contacts there, and people can react, individually to your kind of proposition, if I can put it like that. From here onwards, it's really interesting. I like it when someone comes on and just kind of says, you just basically sort of made a bit of a speech there, Catriona, very, very fluently, and you did brilliantly, by the way. And it's really nice to be provoked. And sometimes those are sort of thoughts that will chunter away. Perhaps I might get inner rumblings myself throughout today. So thank you very much for sharing that. It'll be really interesting to see where this goes. Great. There's your that's
my email address.
Great.
Great.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
What an interesting email address. And we'll see where it goes, but stay in touch. and,
Okay.
and come back to the calls, because it's great
Okay.
when you're provoked into thinking things differently on these calls.
Okay.
And as
Thank
Rhian
you.
says, fascinating. Thanks, beautifully presented.
Thank you very much.
Right, let's go to our third dish of the morning, which is to see what's going on at Prism Arts. Jane Dudman is one of the key leaders at Prism. Just remind us, Jane, I'm sure you're going to do this anyway, but just remind us what Prism does and what you're about, and then what the opportunity is.
So Prism Arts is a charity, an arts charity based in Carlisle, at the Central Methodist Hall in Carlisle. We work with young people and adults with learning disabilities and autism. And the central aim of the organisation is to break down barriers to access to the arts and involvement in the arts and progression in the arts and careers in the arts for people with learning disabilities and autism. So although we tangentially work with other people, that is our core aim and our group and groups of people we work with. So at Prism Arts in Carlisle, at our base, we run 4 different programs working with different groups of people. One of which is a fine art program, which is very that traditional fine art approach to working, where artists come and work with us. They might do a group activity and then they continue their own work in the afternoon. So it introduces people to new ways of thinking, new ways of working, and then people pursue their own individual work in the afternoon. We'd like to develop that into a studio model, but at the moment we need a new home. So that's part of our other part of our aim is to have a new home. And then we also run like a mixed arts day on a Thursday, which is more sort of applied arts and more group work and teamwork. So that group are newer. They work with right across all sorts of different art forms, and they're always exploring new things and developing new work together. So that's much more of a teamwork day, quite a dynamic, active day. We run, we're starting to run in September a new day for young people, sort of school and college leavers, and people who maybe have been left a few years and are just really struggling to continue with creative work and develop their own practice. And then we run a performing arts strand as well. These are all based in Carlisle and all based at the Methodist Hall. We've always worked in West Cumbria at Prism Arts on projects, and they've usually been HLF funded and very theme orientated. And at the moment we're exploring ways of developing sustainable provision in West Cumbria that really fits with our aims, which is about breaking down barriers, but also about developing progression routes for people, so that it's not about just coming and doing a project. It's about how individuals build up their own practice and actually build up their own autonomy as artists and performers, and linking in with other activity that's happening. So it's very much about creating networks for our artists, and so they're not in this disability silo, which often happens, but actually our work is very much about making connections and developing opportunities for artists to actually leave Prism Arts, come through Prism Arts and go off and do other things. So yeah, that in a nutshell.
Great, thank you. And there's an opportunity has arisen for a new role, is that right? Or
yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yes. So this is on the performing arts strand of Prism Arts. So the group runs on a Friday, and they're a group of adults, and some young people who are school and college leavers are also come to that session. So it's beginning, the makeup of the group is changing a bit, but the role is really to develop performing arts in Prism Arts as a really strong strand. That group on a Friday have been through all sorts of different ways of working over the years, because Prism Arts have been running 35 years. They haven't been there 35 years, of course, but they've had lots of different opportunities to do singing with a wonderful opera singer, to do music, to do drumming, to do theatre, to do audio adventures. So at the moment, our performing arts lead is Stefana Screet, who has been absolutely wonderful and has brought the group on so far. I mean, the group are so much more confident in performing. People who were barely taking part in a session are now performing. Stefan's moving on. His own work with Ragged Edge has taken over, really. So, I mean, we want to continue working with Stefan, but what we need is somebody to take on that growth within the group, somebody who is committed to working in inclusive arts, and who is ready to really, develop performing arts within Prism Arts. So that strand definitely on a Friday, but also throughout the other programs. It's a role that's 2 days a week, but as everybody knows, when they join Prism Arts, there's always growth. There's always opportunities that happen. So that role could expand, but at the moment it's 2 days a week. We want somebody who is a lead artist. So somebody who can come in and has got ideas, maybe has quite a hybrid practice, maybe works in lots of different areas, has performing as part of what they do, or somebody who's an out and out performing artist, who's a theatre person or a musician or a dancer. We're very open. For us, it's about getting the right person, and the right person who's going to click with the team and who's going to have ambition for the programme. So it's an exciting role at Prism Arts at the moment. It's just such a lovely team. Everybody's working with the same aim, going in the same direction. There's lots of enthusiasm. It's quite a young team. There's lots of new skills that are coming in there. It's a lovely place to work. And it's quite a dynamic place to work. So if I was in that position, I'd be going for it. If I wasn't doing what I'm doing.
It's always a good test when you try and recruit a role is, will I want this role? I think the 10th of July is the closing day. Is that right, Jane?
It is. And just to say that it's open to somebody who wants to develop their work in this area, wants to develop their practice, as well as somebody who's very experienced and wants to just step in and work, continue their practice, if you like. So the idea is that we will bring somebody along and mentor them in Prism Arts. Somebody can come in and they've got the experience. That's also fantastic. It's the right person that we're looking for. So it doesn't have to be somebody who's an out and out performing arts person, but it needs to be somebody who's open to working like that. Yep,
attitude as ever matters.
Yeah.
Amy's kindly put in a link to the role in chat.
Thank you, Amy.
And as Kate says, Stefan, it's good that you said nice things about Stefan, because he's the vice chair of the network. And if you'd had a go at him, we would have got back to him.
Being fab. We will be doing an audio adventure in the building as well later next month, which was very exciting.
Great.
But please do share with all your networks. You never know, it might just spark something with somebody who's like, actually, I've been thinking about that. Perhaps I'll apply.
Yeah, so great. All right, thanks so much, Jane.
Thank you very much.
As Kate says in chat, again, if you're not familiar with the website, there's always updated opportunities, which are always bang up to date, of jobs going or commissions going in the Cumbrian arts and culture sector. It's a kind of clearinghouse. That's one of the reasons we set up the network, was to be a bit of a clearinghouse for this kind of information. So do keep an eye on that as well. And links are going into chat there as we speak. Lovely. Thanks very much, Jane.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Has anyone else got anything else they want to say about anything? We're at 10:26. I'm going to say thank you to Rhian for a lovely presentation. Thank you to Jane for telling us about what's going on at Prism. Thank you to Catriona for telling us about the Dark Mountain Manifesto and the storytelling and her connection with it. Real food for thought there. Next week, we're going to be back in Kendal, actually, because we're going to find out about Pride. I think, is this Kendal's first Pride? I'm not sure. I think it is. But the organisers of Pride in Kendal have been in touch, and they're going to tell us what their plans are. And we're also going to find out about the Sedbergh Book Festival, which is going on throughout the month of June. Great to be in Sedbergh because we don't have much of a connection with Sedbergh. So I'm going to find out what's going on there. Sedbergh, a bit of a book town, isn't it? If you ever go there, some of you might live there, I don't know, but it's full of nice little bookshops. So we'll find out what makes Sedbergh tick and what the festival holds for the month of June. But I kind of feel we ought to win back 2 minutes and go and get some sunshine if you can, and get some vitamin D and make a cup of tea and just take a bit of time just to enjoy that. So thank you to everybody for coming along this morning. I hope it's been interesting. I found it interesting. Good luck to all those things that are going on, and we'll be back same time, same place next week.